Reasonably period accurate.
Hello there, this is Greg Johnson making, and I'm making an interactive prop for the immersive Lovecraftian theatrical experience, The Key of Dreams. The Key of Dreams is an overnight immersive theatrical experience where you spend the night in a big, real, genuinely beautiful country house, and you can investigate occult mysteries, you can join secret societies, and you can solve puzzles to try and unlock the secrets of the house. It's also a luxury fine dining weekend away with like 4 meals, one of which is a 6-course banquet. It's got rave reviews from interesting people and sounds cool. So what am I making for it? Here's the brief. A strange science contraption of the early 20th century that reveals part of the hidden world. Perhaps a device pioneered by Thomas Carnacki, or one of the forms of Nyarlathotep. Carnacki, for those that don't know, is a fictional occult detective invented by William Hope Hodgson, who fought the occult and studied it using scientific gizmos. If I was being lowbrow, I'd say Ghostbusters in Sherlock Holmes days. So we're thinking 1910. What's our aesthetic going to be? It's going to be brass and copper, wood, leather, the days when electricity seemed a bit more elemental and untamed than it does now. So Tesla, Frankenstein's lab, that world. And the brief of what this thing has to do is very specific, which is nice. I don't know how much to give away, but it works using a thing called induction LEDs, which are little LED lights, light emitting diode, which light up when a coil of wire with power going through it gets near to them. So they glow in proximity to an object, which is really quite magical. The organiser, Ivan, and I had a big long Zoom chat, and talked about divining rods, metal detectors, magnifying glasses, and yet even after all that I still ended up just saying, can you just draw it for me? Because when you're making something for someone, there are just so many questions, like does it need to reach the ground like a metal detector? Should it be on a short handle like a magnifying glass? Does it need to reach? Does it need to plug in? When you say big battery pack, how big are we talking? But I was sent this wonderful sketch which made it very, very clear what it's supposed to look like. I have boxes and boxes of old wood and bits of brass and saved rusty screws for use in period props, so I was ready. So I got out a big box and went shopping in a parallel dimension. Some lovely old drawers made by my grandpa, which I decided to use in the end. Some equally old and wooden broom handles, some giant white cable ties, some fine wire mesh, some knobs, potentiometers I think they're called, a little orange LED dog tag, a part of an old heat gun or genuine vintage parts, some decorative jewellery box corners, some wooden coasters, a nice on-off toggle switch, some wooden bits, some copper pipe clamps, an old belt, some black metal pipe clamps, and a hunting horn. I've got 3 of them. What? So this ring is what gives the power to the lights. Ivan has a laser cutter, lucky boy, so he sent me 2 of these wooden rings, which will be the housing for the magnifying glass shaped divining rod detector. I've been calling it gizmo. So yeah, when it passes over the induction LEDs, they light up. It might be a chart on a wall, they might be embedded in a path so you can find your way. It's a cool idea. So cool that I really don't want to stop them from working. So all the way through this, I'm testing them all the time to see if enshrouding them in wood and paint and tape will stop it working. So once I've superglued that ring of wire onto one of the wooden rings, I'm then cutting out just little bits of square dowel to set the thickness of this ring. It's pretty simple stuff. I'm just supergluing them all around and thinking, if I don't use metal in this ring, I won't worry about it so much interfering with the electrical current. You can tell I don't quite know. It's all very instinctual. It's all very, I bet metal would be a problem and plastic and wood wouldn't. Because I remember, you know, 10% of stuff about conductivity and magnets, and that metal. Now, the interesting thing with this prop, to me anyway, hopefully you too, about this prop is that every design choice in it is just a problem solved. So, because I want to use this genuinely old vintage broom handle that isn't hollow, so the wires have to go down something else. We want things to be made of brass. I've got this old hunting horn. I need something to hide that bit of circuit board, and I've got that square chunk of, I think, old heat gun or something. So the design of it is just purely dictated by where the mechanics need to go. Got to use my chisel, that was quite nice. Horizontal cut across the broom handle with a model saw, just 2 lines down with a Stanley knife, and then chiseled. This is a wooden puzzle piece, so I'm using that to hold these wires onto the handle so they're now affixed, but not in a way that means you can't get to them. So everything's accessible, fixable, changeable, updatable, whatever the client needs to do once I hand this thing over. It's not just a big blob of hot glue that you can't fix. Once again, using wood, quite a nice challenge to combine real old vintage metal with something made from scratch and try to make them match. These are just wooden hexagons cut 1 in half with my mitre shears. Then back to plastic, these giant white cable ties. I've just masking taped one all around the outside, very worried about this thing popping off. So very tightly taped it on and then ran super glue between all those bits of tape. Hit it with accelerator and just let that be before you take the tape off, and then fill in the gaps where the tape was with more super glue. This one particularly, I use super glue. Isn't that nice? Still works. So as I say, lots of super glue because it's tough and it's quick. I'm using super glue on this one. Like, have you seen the film Brewster's Millions? It's Richard Pryor gets left loads and loads of money and he has to waste it all. It's in the will that he has to spend it all, but he can't tell anyone that he's just trying to waste as much money as he possibly can. I'm kind of doing that with super glue. These rivets aren't rivets, they're plastic screw covers. They have a cross-shaped peg on the back, so they fit into a Phillips head screw. So just cut those off with my snips and then stuck them all around, and then I skinned it again with more super glue. Smear it around with my gomja bar and then scumble it in with a little sponge. The sponge will be destroyed, but it's a sacrificial sponge, and we thank it for its contribution. Never to be forgotten. This plastic that these giant cable ties are made from, it's the worst kind of, most frightening kind of plastic to any painter. It's waxy. If you're a scratch basher, you're going to know what I mean. Plastic it's almost rubbery, it's almost translucent. It's just, I don't know what this signifies, but this signifies I don't like it. So rather than simply sanding it, I thought, well, I've bought this pack of different thicknesses of quite nice masking tape. Let's give it a skin of tape. So we're absolutely minimising how much of that white plastic is left open to the elements. Because again, it's particularly self-conscious when you're handing something over, not only to the client, but then they are going to be handing it to their guests. This is going to be man-handled, woman-handled, just person-handled by, I shudder to even say it, but the general public. You know them. Not like us, not you and me. Like the general public, like normal people. Can you imagine? Ugh. That was a satire of being snooty. I'm the general... You understand. You understand. I want a slightly crusty, slightly textured skin, and I want it to dry like that. Let's just slop some super glue on that. I might as well put it in a super soaker. Just super glue the whole room. I'm allowing a tiny bit more metal. These are brass round-headed furniture nails, cutting off most of it, so there's just a tiny peg left, and then I've used my pin vise to do 4 little holes, and I'm just super gluing on the head of one of those nails just around this wooden fiddly. 3rd time's the charm. Sticking those rivets around this bit to make this connection look tough, but it's all just super glue and lies. My new album. Super glue and lies. Very nice, very happy with it. So wrap the handle in brown paper, masking tape around the top, and then let's have a pretty understated, gentle, quite muted prime time. So that's black spray can primer, so now I can see how much texture there is or isn't on there, and I'm going for it. I'm going for that suspension bridge that's been painted a ton of times, you know, civic bench, like a green, like a racing green metal bench that's been painted a million times, so it's really, really crusty. That's just black paint, Mod Podge, and a pinch of, I think, ground black pepper. Stipple that all over, and then this is a very heavy dry brush using miniature paints to paint a full-size prop. I must be made of money, but it's Lead Belcher, which is a lovely dark, warm, pewterish silver. Not really a dry brush. What is it? It's just a paint job with gaps in it. Then, although this is very steely and looks quite heavy when you first do it, just to sharpen these edges and make it pop to your eye, I'm running along all the edges with a liquid chrome pen, which just sharpens everything up and makes it look a bit more machine cut. But it's time for warmth. This is Agrax Earthshade, my favourite brown wash, and I'm just putting it in all the nooks and crannies and crevices and shadows, popping the contrast, but also adding some warmth to that silver. So just dab it on where it would gather. If it was oil running over this thing, would it need oiling? I guess it would. And then if there's too much, just dab it off with a paper towel. I'm now removing the cling film from the handle. Does it still work? Yes, let's cover that circuit board. This is it's not actually Duplo branded, but it's a building block. So I want to make a removable cover for that bit of circuit. I mean, this thing might be out in the rain or something. I really hope it isn't, but I don't know. I'm handing it over, you know, I'm sending my child off to look after itself. So I cut the ends off that box, cut the two big nubbins off, covered the nubbin holes with a bit of black styrene, and then I put a screw in either side. So again, this box is just, with a screwdriver, completely removable. It's not watertight or anything, but it covers up that circuit board. And then because the metal vintage piece I'm using to cover it up has holes in, I'm just covering each side with some black cloth tape and colouring in the green bits with a Sharpie. This thing, is it from a heat gun? I think it was a heat gun, but they're just nice bits of junk which you save, and then one day you've got to make one of these. I mean, you might not have to, but I in my case ended up having to make one of these. That fits over there very nicely and is held on with, I think I put 2 screws in the end, because if you hold something on with 1 screw you worry about it being a pivot point. So I put 2 of those flathead brass screws. One of the few things I had to buy for this project were just some flathead brass screws, because Phillips head is a period no-no. So anytime this circuit board needs working on, you undo those 2 screws, slide the square bit down, undo the side screws, and the box comes off, and there's the circuit board. Whoop! There it is. Electrocraft. Electrocraft makes me nervous, I don't know if you've noticed. This is making a wire longer, so it's the simplest Electrocraft you can do. Pull the sleeve off, and then I've got some wire of my own. I'm twisting them together very tightly, holding it together with electrical tape, some heat shrink over each of those connections, and then another larger bit of heat shrink over the whole thing. So it's a very solid connection. Plugging it into a 12-volt power source. Hey! It works. I mean, there's no reason it shouldn't. If you can connect red to red and black to black, but things can always go wrong, so let's not be complacent. So I slide those wires down my half a hunting horn so they come out at the handle, and then all I have to do is figure out how to attach this hunting horn to the wooden handle. I've got some of these copper pipe clamps, which were slightly too large, but I just pushed them in at the sides with a screwdriver and screwed them in to the handle. The brief requested a leather wrapped handle. I'm hoping an imitation leather wrapped handle will suffice. This is from an old belt that just had a nice cracked leather texture, so I wrapped that around and then used 2 of the belt loops on either end. And then here, period wire I think would be cloth. You could buy some vintage looking cloth wrapped wire, but I thought, well, I've got cloth tape, so I used brown paper tape first, and then this is just a roll of, as I say, slightly hairy cloth black tape, which up till now I've only really used to make little jackets for characters in Jabberwocky, or the guy that was hanging upside down in the Martian tripod video. Oh, I think I used it inside the microphone in my Christmas video, so it looks like an old vintage microphone. Good job I did that, because I'm sure lots of people would have spotted if I hadn't. There's part of me that doesn't want to talk about this connection because it was rough. It's not easy to connect a wire to the mouthpiece of a hunting horn. I cut a toy telescope in half and painted it gold. I tried various ways to make a nozzle or a connector, but in the end I thought, well, cloth wrapped looks good, so I'll use some more of that leatherine from the belt and create a sort of wrapping around where the wire comes out of and it looks fine. Fine, but shiny. So more Agrax Earthshade, just putting it into all the nooks and crannies, things like the brass screw heads. You want to just get some dark dirt into the head of the screw, and just so things aren't shiny and new. Speaking of not shiny, here's some more dirty down rust. Stippling this stuff on. It's great, but it's bold. When it dries, it's very matte and it's quite bright, and you think, wow, I've made some choices there. But it looks great and it looks real. As I say, having this right next to some genuine vintage metal was it was like doing a prop weathering driving test or something. It was like the scene in Royal Tenenbaums where he says, make yours like mine. So they're next to each other, so let's make this look quite a lot like that. So as a final non-shininess pass that always makes everything look more realistic, I did a dust pass with some chalk pastels, peachy brown, grey brown and grey. It just knocks it all down. It looks like it's had cobwebs blown off it and it's been sort of down the bottom of a shed next to a lawnmower for years and years. Chapter 2 of 2, the battery pack. This drawer was made by my granddad. If you see, they have words inside because I used them in a music video for my friend Carl Cully. I thought very long and hard about using these, but in the end I decided that it's a collaboration with my granddad. This wood could be over 100 years old, but I'm giving it a new life, and it's making my prop look very, very legit indeed. So I took one of these drawers out, took a panel off the back because these planks were already cut to the right width. Very carefully with a screwdriver and a chisel I prized off this bit of half circular beading to tidy up these edges, and it was a joy to use. So 3 blobs of wood glue for strength and 2 dots of super glue for speed, because ideally we have both, and then just holding those on with masking tape while that sets, and putting some wood glue on the back again in the gaps between the tape, because this thing needs to be tough. Very happy with that, and making a lid out of any new wood would have been just very hard to match to, so I'm glad I used all vintage all the time. The client asked for a lid removable with screws, but I thought you could do it with 1 screw. If I used this rather nice ornate jewellery box hinge, the whole front could just hinge down and then it's just held in with 1 screw rather than 4. You just need it to be held closed away from prying hands, and I thought that was rather neat solution. Jewellery box corners, just tapping those in with nails, which never bent, and it all went very smoothly, and I didn't get through an entire bag of, it's fine. So these, because it's on 1 hinge, I don't want that lid moving from side to side, so 2 bits of good old square dowel as pegs to hold it in place. And speaking of placeholders, if you need a segue, they're not necessary, but it's nice to do them, isn't it, for smooth running. I don't have the big battery. This thing is going to be run off, by the client's own admission, a rather absurdly massive battery, but I do have the battery's dimensions, so I just cut out some bits of cardboard as templates for how big the battery is. Hatch an area inside where I know don't put anything in this space because that's where the battery lives. Putting potentiometers, or knobs, into thick wood, it turns out, is quite tough because they're basically a nut and bolt and a washer, and you only have a certain amount of thread where you can still attach the knob on the top, and basically had to do a lot of drilling down and using conical countersink bits to just make that hole as shallow as possible so that there was enough peg for the knob to attach to on the outside. The client requested a speaker hole. It currently doesn't have a speaker, but it might have a speaker in future. In the future! If they want to add some more functionality. So this is, I think, an old brass lamp part, and then I've got some very fine wire mesh, coloured it in with a gold pen so it looks as brass as everything around it. Hold that on with super glue, and then I always have to do a couple of steps too far. This is some black tulle, so in case you look in, there's no way you can see anything because there's no light in there, and why did I don't know. There's cloth on a speaker, isn't there, so you put some cloth on there. And then screw on that lamp part, and it looks great. And I should say all the metal parts here, they've all been sanded with wire wool, just so that they'll take a little bit of brown wash and don't look new. Electrocraft 2. The temptation to say Electric Boogaloo. The most famous sequel name in the history of the world. I've never seen it. This is not Electric Boogaloo. I wanted to say The Secret of the Ooze, but that's another Grandad joke. Comment below. What are any other famous sequel subtitles of film number 2? Electrocraft 2, Craft Harder. Electrocraft and the Temple of Doom? No, that's terrible. So, the client requested a light to be switched on with a switch. So let's learn how to attach a switch to something. It's a thing you put on a dog collar so you can find your dog at night, and it's just quite a nice chunky bulb. I did this before I put the lights on my Vindaloo monster, so this is my first switch. Attach that to one of these retro looking toggle switches. It's on a battery pack, but just make sure that that is permanently on. And there it is. You just put the switch on the red line. It's quite simple really. And then again, chiseling away, attaching switches to thick wood. Fiddly. Rotary tool, then chisel, then for the first time using a stone like a grinding bit, which was actually quite satisfying. It went quite smooth, so I was grinding away this wood to get it about 4 or 5 mil thick so the switch would fit. Then goth glue to hold the wires and the backs of the knobs and the sides of the switch. Just hold everything in place with goth glue. Speaking of holding in place, put some of this heat shrink over the connectors where the wire meets the switch. And then this, I thought, let's get a new bit of wood, which is the block of wood into which you screw the lid to hold it shut. So I've put a skin of super glue on it to make it a bit more crispy and a bit less flaky and splintery. And then I've just stuck a little washer on the outside, again to protect the wood. If you're repeatedly, I don't think they'll have to open this thing up too much, but if you're repeatedly putting a screw in, you know, protect your wood. at all costs. For the little light, I just painted that orange LED with some clear red contrast paint, stuck it in on the back, I think with hot glue, then I've super glued a washer around it, found a hexagonal brass washer, a little nut, and thought that's quite nice, stuck that on as well, and now I'm just covering it with UV resin and curing it with, of course, your friend and mine, the gift of intense purpleness. Don't need to hold your torch, just leave it standing on there, and now that's nice and set. So that light doesn't wobble, it's really fixed in place, and turning it on and off is very satisfying. Tung, tung, it's got that metal like tung. Then again, I haven't got the big battery, but I know how big the big battery is. So I'm just hot gluing some foam around where I think the battery will go, but I've told the client if it's in the wrong place, rip it out, put more foam in if you need it. Once it's in your hands, it's yours, but I think this is where the foam should go. And then a little whimsical flourish, but I think they look quite cool. Some old wooden coasters. They've just got some nice age to them. This strap again is fake leather, but to age it, again, just sand it. Using my Kachunka, my pilot hole maker that I haven't used in ages, to just hit some pilot holes where it needs to go. Again, sanded that little black pipe clamp to make it look old. Pipe clamp over the clips of the shoulder strap. And finally, a little bit of old yoga mat, floor mat, over the backs of those two knobs in case they clack on the top of the battery, which I don't think they will, but you never know. I'll get some power in that and show that it still works. Yeah. It still works. And before I dash this off to the post office, because it's needed in a show about 2 days after I finish it, let's get some very, very quick shots of the finished thing. Awesome, a nice challenge, and I'm very happy with it. It's not quite steampunk, is it? It's not quite as ornate as Jules Verne. It's not atom punk, because that's more 50s kind of ray gun. What is it? It's sort of Tesla punk. Electricity coils, Carnacki, Frankenstein, which, in case it isn't clear, is a world I quite like. I think my Lovecraftian resonator I built might be the build that got me this gig. So if you need anything of this ilk, or indeed of any ilk, for your stage play or your music video or your comedy sketch or your Edinburgh show or your pantomime, get in touch, because I do love a commission. And I'm cheap. Really undervalue my skills. And my time's worth almost nothing. Welcome aboard to brand... I always say welcome aboard. Is that good vibes? Good vibes only? Anyway, welcome aboard, or thank you for your patronage, or just thank you to new patron Paul Pearson.
And also Daniel Kibblewhite Pounds.
Hopefully I will have another episode out in a week. I know I'm spoiling you, but you're worth it. Which will be another fun commission thing for a theatrical thing, and then episode 42. Episode 42, which is going to be quite the production number. Thank you very much for watching, lots of love from me, and I will see you soon, very soon. Just check if there's any new patrons. Just filming myself waiting for Safari to open. Here we are.